My parents did not invite my adopted daughter to Christmas and said that she is not part of the family, so she will sit at a separate table. I still remember the crisp December morning as we drove toward my parents' house. The sky was pale, and the bare branches reached out like skeleton fingers against a steel-gray backdrop. My wife, Emily, sat beside me, her hands in her lap, twisting the edge of her scarf. I glanced over and saw that she looked tense, but I didn't know why until later. Our daughter, Sophie, bundled in her pink coat and fuzzy mittens, looked out the window, humming a little tune she made up that morning. That tune should have been about joy, but today it sounded fragile. We pulled up the long driveway, and my mother came out with a bright smile, outstretched arms, and a Christmas sweater embroidered with fake snowflakes. My heart swelled thinking we were here to celebrate together. But the moment she saw Sophie, her expression shifted. She drew her arms back, as though Sophie's presence burned like a sudden flame on her sweater. "You must be freezing, darling," my mother said, her voice clipped, distant. She handed Sophie a thin scarf. I took Sophie's little hand. My mother didn't offer to help. I glanced at my father, standing by the door, nodding stiffly, but his eyes never met Sophie's. Inside, the house smelled of pine, cinnamon sticks, and buttered bread baking in the oven. The living room was a nursery of cozy charm, red ribbons, glittering ornaments, twinkling lights, but it felt staged, unreal. Decorations everywhere except the dining table, where half the seats were empty. My mother cleared her throat. "We've set Sophie up in the breakfast nook," she announced. "She'll be fine there." My heart froze. "Mom, what do you mean?" "She's part of this family." My mother shook her head. "She isn't. We have our traditions. She can eat with us later, after presents." I looked at Emily, whose face went white. Sophie gripped my coat sleeve, confused. At 5, she was too young to question what was happening, but old enough to sense the shift. I tried to smile at her. "It'll be okay, sweetheart," I whispered. We sat down anyway, at the main table. She sat alone, in bright pink, cut off behind the kitchen door. In her eyes I saw a mixture of excitement and dread. A silence settled among us, as though we were refusing to speak the words that hung in the air. My father broke it, clearing his throat. "Let's go around and say what we're thankful for," he said, with a forced joviality. My mother began, fingering her napkin. "I'm thankful for this," she swept her arm over the bow-decorated table. Then she hesitated, looking toward the breakfast nook. The hush returned. No one dared say Sophie's name. I spoke next. "I'm thankful for family, for being together, and for this year together." Then I added, "and for Sophie." My words made my mother's lips tighten. From the nook came a small voice, "Daddy, may I say what I'm thankful for too?" It was simple, hopeful, innocent. My chest thundered with pride, and heartbreak. My mother's gaze snapped to Sophie. "We don't need to dramatize this," she said sharply. Sophie looked down again, hugging herself. I stood. "No. Let her speak." I walked to her. I reached for the handle, but my wife beat me to it, calming me with a gentle touch on my arm. Before my rational mind caught up, I'd moved. Sophie looked up. "I'm thankful for my new home," she began, voice quivering, "and for Christmas with everyone here." She paused, searching my mother's face. "And I love Nana and Papa." My mother's hand flinched. My father stared at his mashed potatoes. My wife's eyes stung. I felt a trembling fury inside, a cold spark. But I didn't raise my voice. I took Sophie by the hand, returned to my seat, while others looked away. I wanted to say everything, "She is your granddaughter." But words stuck in my throat. Dinner proceeded in strained silence. The yams and turkey grew cold. Sophie barely ate. I shared bits with her, leaning sideways. Each time the adults glanced, I saw guilt cloud my mother's eyes, but she held her head high, as though she'd done no wrong. Later, in the living room, the gifts were passed around. Sophie lingered at the doorway, clutching her scarf. My wife and I exchanged a look. We'd talked about this before, how to respond if something like this happened, but in practice, standing there was harder. Then something small happened. Sophie's cousin, little Max, peeked out from under the couch. "Come on, Sophie," he whispered. "It's time for presents." He smiled. Then he tugged on her coat sleeve. She stepped forward, and they both entered the warm circle. My heart surged. Emily and I held our breath. My mother gave a tight smile, but didn't protest. Sophie unwrapped a doll, a well-chosen gift. Her eyes brightened. She ran to Emily, squealing, and my father's eyes flickered. He cleared his throat and said, "Glad you joined us, sophomore." It was small, but it was something. I caught my mother's gaze. She looked away. And I knew the real conflict was just beginning. The ride home was quiet. Sophie was asleep in the back seat, her new doll cradled in her arms. The pink ribbon had slipped into her lap, and the glow of the dashboard light made her look peaceful, completely unaware of the storm swirling between Emily and me. Emily stared out the window, silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "She's 5, she said, barely louder than a whisper. 5. And they treated her like a guest in her own family. "I know," I said, though my voice didn't sound like mine. "I didn't expect that. I really didn't think they'd." "You didn't think?" She turned to face me, her eyes brimming. "You knew your mother had opinions. You told me once that she needed time to adjust. How much time does she need?" I couldn't answer. Because I didn't know. I'd spent my whole life trying to decode my mother's subtle manipulations, her coldness masquerading as concern, her rules dressed up as tradition. But now, when that same behavior was turned on my daughter, the illusion shattered. Back home, we tucked Sophie into bed. Emily kissed her forehead and lingered, watching her sleep. I stood in the hallway, my fists clenched. The next morning, I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring. "Good morning," she said, like nothing had happened. "Wasn't it a lovely Christmas?" "No," I said flatly. A pause. "Excuse me? You didn't let Sophie sit at the table. You made her eat alone. You didn't call her family. You barely looked at her." "She's not blood," my mother replied, her voice calm, rehearsed. "She's sweet, but she isn't. She is my daughter. She's adopted." "So was Jesus," I snapped before I could stop myself. Another pause. "Don't get dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being a father." There was silence on the line. Then, in a tight voice, she said, "I don't mean to offend. But she's not your real child. And I think you're rushing this. You and Emily, this whole adoption, it's all been so fast." I had to walk to the kitchen. I needed to hold on to the counter. My whole body trembled. "She calls me Daddy," I said. "She cries when she scrapes her knee and runs to me. She crawls into our bed at 3 a.m. when there's thunder. What do you think parenting is?" "She's not from you," my mother said. "You don't understand." "No," I said. "You don't." I ended the call. Emily found me sitting on the floor, our dog curled up beside me. She didn't ask what was said. She just sat down, leaning against me. We stayed like that a long time. Over the next few days, the fallout spread like cracks in glass. My father emailed me, a bland message about tensions and hope for understanding. My sister sent a photo of her and her kids in front of the tree. No Sophie in sight. No caption. But life, cruel and consistent, moved forward. Sophie started drawing again, pictures of Christmas trees, snowflakes, stick figures holding hands. She always drew a tall figure, a shorter one, and her, right in the middle. But something in her posture changed. She hesitated before handing us the drawings. She asked more questions. "Daddy, why didn't Nana want me at the table?" That question made my breath catch. Emily knelt down and said, "Sometimes grown-ups forget how to be kind." Sophie looked at her, wide-eyed. "Even at Christmas?" "Even then." We didn't answer her more than that. She was 5. She didn't need a lecture on prejudice. But the question hung in the air for days. And then something strange happened. My brother-in-law, Emily's younger brother, came to visit. He brought his fiancée, Jenna, and without saying a word, they walked in with armfuls of food and gifts. They set up their own little holiday night, hot cocoa, board games, cookies. They brought a dollhouse for Sophie, already assembled, decorated with stickers and fairy lights. No explanations. Just love. It changed the mood in the house. For the first time since Christmas, Sophie laughed without hesitation. She ran up and hugged Jenna without being prompted. That night, she drew another picture, this time with more people. When she showed it to me, I nearly cried. "See," she said. "This is my family." It didn't include my parents. But it included us. It included Jenna and her fiancé. It even had our dog. And for the first time in days, I felt something that had been absent. Hope. January arrived with its usual gray skies and icy winds. The sparkle of the holidays had faded, but the ache from what happened on Christmas still clung to everything. Emily and I tried to settle into the rhythm of everyday life, packing lunches, doing laundry, reading bedtime stories, but something had shifted. Sophie started asking more questions. Will Nana visit us, or, if I was born in your tummy, would they love me more? She asked these questions the way kids do, casually, like they were just wondering if it might rain tomorrow. But each one landed in my chest like a weight. One night, as I tucked her in, she whispered, "Is it bad that I don't want to go to their house again?" Her eyes were searching, unsure if she was allowed to feel what she felt. I kissed her forehead and said, "You never have to go anywhere that doesn't make you feel safe." That seemed to calm her. She fell asleep with her new doll tucked under her arm. But I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the dinner over and over. How I should have stood up more forcefully. How I let her sit alone. The guilt gnawed at me. A week later, we got a card in the mail. It was from my mother. A thick, cream-colored envelope with her looping cursive. Inside was a formal apology. Not handwritten, a typed letter. Cold. It read like something from a business transaction: "We recognize your concerns and apologize for any discomfort caused." Discomfort? That's what they called it? At the bottom was a short line scribbled in pen: "We hope to move past this." No mention of Sophie by name. I showed it to Emily. She read it once, said nothing, and handed it back. "What do we do with this?" I asked. Emily folded her arms. "Nothing. Unless it comes with real change, it's just paper." I knew she was right. But I couldn't stop thinking about my parents, especially my father. He hadn't said much. He never did. He'd been a steady, quiet presence most of my life. But now I saw his silence differently. It wasn't wisdom. It was complicity. Still, something in me wanted to believe he didn't agree. That he simply didn't know how to speak up. So I reached out. I asked him to meet for coffee. Alone. We sat at the old diner near his work, red booths, chipped mugs, familiar smells. He looked older than I remembered. His hair was more gray than white now, and his hands trembled slightly as he stirred his coffee. "I got your card," I began. He nodded. "We meant well." "You meant what?" "We didn't mean to hurt anyone. You set my daughter at a separate table." He flinched, just a little. "Your mother, she has a way she thinks things should be." "What about what I think?" I asked. "What about what Sophie felt?" He didn't answer. I pressed. "Do you love her?" He looked away, toward the window, watching the traffic. "She's a good kid." "That's not what I asked." His jaw tightened. "She's not mine to love." I swallowed hard. "She's mine. That makes her yours." A pause. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. This world. It moves so fast. There are so many new rules. It's not about rules. It's about people. About love. You don't need to understand everything to be kind." He took a long sip of coffee, eyes down. I leaned forward. "You stood there and watched her sit by herself. Did that feel right to you?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he whispered, "No." That cracked something open. I didn't know how to fix it without starting a fight, he said. And your mother, when she's set in her ways. I don't care anymore if it starts a fight, I said. This is my child. You either accept her or you're not part of our life. He blinked at that. You'd cut us off? I'd protect my daughter. There was something different in his expression then. Fear, maybe. Or clarity. I want to know her, he said suddenly. I don't know how. But I'd like to try. I didn't say yes right away. I wasn't sure if I believed him. Instead, I said, we'll see. That evening, I told Emily everything. She listened in silence, arms wrapped around her knees. Do you think he means it? She asked. I think he's scared to be left behind, I said. And maybe that's a start. She nodded slowly. I don't want Sophie to be anyone's second chance. She won't be, I said. Not again. But Emily was right to be cautious. Because apologies aren't always followed by change. That weekend, my father showed up at our door. Alone. No grand gestures. No gifts. Just him, wearing the same old jacket he'd had since I was a kid. Sophie was in the living room, building towers with blocks. When she saw him, she froze. He didn't kneel or rush to her. He just said, "Hi, Sophie. Can I watch you build?" She nodded, slowly. He sat on the floor, legs stiff, and watched as she added block after block. After a while, he asked, "What are you building?" "A tower to the moon." "That's a long way." "I know," she said proudly. They sat together like that for 20 minutes. Saying almost nothing. But something shifted in those moments. Later, Sophie whispered to me, "Papa didn't ignore me." I hugged her, my eyes wet. A few weeks passed before we heard from my mother again. She didn't call. Didn't text. Just sent a message through my father one evening when he dropped by with a bag of oranges and 2 puzzles for Sophie. "Your mom wants to talk," he said awkwardly. "She says she's been thinking." Emily and I looked at each other. "She can call me," I said. My father sighed. "You know your mother. She doesn't like to admit when she's wrong. Then she's not ready to talk." He didn't push. He set the puzzles on the kitchen counter, gave Sophie a soft pat on the back, and left. Sophie didn't ask about Nana. She did, however, take a new interest in puzzles. She sat for hours fitting pieces together, her tongue peeking out in concentration. "Look, Daddy," she said one night, holding up the finished image of a farmyard. "I did it myself." "You sure did," I said, sitting beside her. "All the pieces in the right place." "I don't like when pieces are missing," she said seriously. "It makes me sad." I kissed the top of her head. "Me too." That weekend, I got another letter. Handwritten this time. From my mother. It started with no greeting, just her thoughts, spilled across lined paper in the cursive she'd taught me as a kid. "I'm not good with change. I thought I was, but I'm not. I hurt you. I hurt that little girl. And for what? Because I didn't see her the way I should have? I don't even know why I did what I did. It felt like something I was allowed to feel, but now, I can't sleep without seeing her face at that little table, all by herself. I was wrong. There was no flourish. No excuses. Just that. At the bottom, she'd written, "If you'll let me try again, I will." Emily and I read the letter together. Then again. Then one more time. Emily didn't say anything at first. Finally, she looked at me and said, "If we do this, she gets 1 chance. Not 2. 1. I know. I mean it, James. I won't let her break Sophie again." "I know," I repeated. And I did. So we called her. Sophie was playing with her Legos in the living room when we did. She looked up when she heard us say, "Nana," but didn't get up. She didn't rush to the phone. She just listened. "Hi, Mom," I said. There was a pause. Then her voice, thin and unsure, "Hi. We got your letter." "I meant it," she said. I held the phone in silence for a second. Then come over next Sunday. For dinner. I'll bring dessert. No, just bring yourself. She laughed nervously. Okay. I will. When Sunday came, I was a mess of nerves. Emily cooked pot roast, Sophie set the table with extra care, and I vacuumed the living room twice. We didn't know what to expect. Would it be awkward? Would it fall apart? At 5:30 sharp, the doorbell rang. Sophie looked up at me, uncertain. I knelt down. You don't have to talk to her if you don't want to, I said. I want to see what she says, she replied. When I opened the door, my mother was standing there in a dark coat, holding nothing but a soft expression. Not even a purse. It struck me, for some reason, that she came empty-handed. No baked goods. No boxes. Just her. She knelt the second she saw Sophie. And she said, I'm sorry, sweetheart. Sophie didn't say anything. She looked at her, wide-eyed, then slowly took a step forward. You hurt my heart, she said quietly. My mother's eyes welled up. I know. And I'll never do it again. They stood there a moment longer, and then Sophie reached out and took her hand. Dinner was quiet at first. Stiff. My mother was clearly trying, but it was effortful. She asked Sophie about school, about the dollhouse, about the moon tower she'd built from blocks. Sophie answered cautiously, still testing the waters. After dessert, my mom helped Sophie with a puzzle. The three of us sat watching them, the puzzle pieces clicking together. Piece by piece, like something slowly being rebuilt. Then Sophie, without prompting, said, You can call me your granddaughter now, if you want. I saw my mother's hands tremble. I would love that, she said. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Emily and I sat on the couch. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then she said, That wasn't just an apology. That was a start. I nodded. We'll see if it sticks. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You think it will? I thought of the way my mother's eyes had filled with tears. The way she knelt without hesitation. The way Sophie had reached out. I think it might. The snow melted late that year. By the time March rolled around, the trees were still bare and the sidewalks frosted over each morning. But inside our house, something had changed. Not all at once, but enough to feel it. Sophie had started talking about Nana again, this time in a tone of curiosity rather than confusion or pain. She likes blueberry pie, she told Emily one morning while helping peel apples for a cobbler. And she wears funny slippers. Emily raised an eyebrow. Funny how? Like, they have dogs on them, Sophie said, giggling. Emily smiled, and I knew that something had shifted, not just in Sophie, but in us. The tension that had gripped every conversation about my parents had started to ease, replaced with cautious optimism. Cautious, but real. My mother came over more regularly. At first, it was just dinners. Then Sunday afternoons. Eventually, she started showing up unannounced, but always with a soft knock, a pause before entering, a question in her eyes, Is it okay if I'm here? Sophie no longer needed prompting. She ran to greet her, sometimes with drawings in hand, other times with a story from school. The two of them had their own rhythm now, tea parties, puzzles, the occasional walk around the block. But what stood out most was what wasn't said. No one brought up Christmas. Not Emily, not me, not even Sophie. It was as if we all knew that revisiting it might reopen something still tender. We didn't need to rehash it. We just had to make sure it never happened again. One day, in mid-April, Sophie came home from school with a class assignment, write a short story about your family. She worked on it for 2 days. Crayons, markers, glue sticks, scattered across the kitchen table like confetti. When she finally showed us the finished product, it was a collage. At the center, a big heart made of cut-up red construction paper. Inside the heart were drawings of all of us. Me, Emily, herself, and yes, Nana and Papa too. Our dog, the neighbors, even Jenna and her fiancé. Everyone was smiling. The title, written in uneven block letters at the top, said, My Real Family. Emily blinked fast. Sweetheart, this is beautiful. Sophie nodded, proud. My teacher says family is the people who love you the most. I looked at the drawing again. Something inside me gave way, a mix of relief, joy, and that fragile thing you only get after walking through the fire, peace. Later that night, I took a walk with my father. It was still chilly, but the sky had started to turn orange with spring. We didn't talk much at first. We never did. But as we rounded the corner near the old park, he said, "She's really something, your girl." She is. I still don't always know what to say to her. You don't have to say anything. You just have to show up. He nodded. Your mom, she's trying. You know she's stubborn. But she's changed more than I've seen her change in 20 years. I didn't reply right away. Then I said, Sophie gave her a second chance. That means everything. He looked up at the trees. You know, I never saw myself as the kind of grandparent who needed redemption. But here we are. You're not alone. We walked a while longer. When we returned home, Emily and my mother were sitting on the porch swing, talking quietly. Sophie was inside, drawing something new. My father stopped at the foot of the steps. Thank you, he said, almost under his breath. For what? For giving us a chance. Even when we didn't deserve it. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. The following Christmas, Sophie helped us hang ornaments. We bought a new tree skirt that year, one she picked out herself. Bright blue with silver stars. Emily baked the gingerbread cookies. I handled the mashed potatoes. My parents arrived early, offering to help. There was no separate table. Sophie sat at the center of everything, chattering away, helping pass the bowls, telling jokes she'd half heard at school. At one point, she looked around and said, "This is how Christmas is supposed to be." We all paused. Then my mother said, "Yes, sweetheart. It is." No one spoke of the year before. But we all remembered. And that was enough. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.